Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Rich, here's a question that fascinates me. Why are people so subdued at the moment?
Why are they so subdued and why are they so asleep, right?
Indeed.
I have a particular answer, which I think has a big part to play, but is not the whole thing. And I don't know if I've told you in our offline conversations, my children never went to school. They've been home educated. And why I wanted them to be home educated for a whole variety of reasons is because school destroys the capacity to question. And school, people don't get this. And I've had conversations with teachers and they don't know this. Schools were set up in order to train children in conformity, obedience, and compliance. And one of the things,
the hoop song, another brick in the wall.
Yeah, but and one of the things that always sort of didn't sit right with me is that who brought schools to India? Well, it was the British imperialists. Now, British imperialism wasn't an exercise in philanthropy. They didn't bring schools to India because they wanted to have an educated, aware population. No, they brought schools to India to give the message, listen to us. We are your lords and masters. Follow our gods, not your gods.
Now, let me take another interesting example. The public schools in England.
Okay.
Now, the public schools in England appeared because the empire was growing. And typically, the managers and the army officers were taken from the aristocracy. But the empire was growing at such an extent that there weren't enough aristocrats to go round. So something had to replace that. And so they started having these public schools, which became a big deal from about 1800. There were some before, because this was to provide the managers and officers for empire. Sandhurst, which I've written about extensively and went to twice, 3 times, if you include the time I went to write the book, was all about really taking people from different backgrounds and turning them into officers and gentlemen. It was this social rite of passage, which would then give you a manager or an officer with an imprimatur for command or whatever. Now, the education has always been about primarily social conformity rather than education. Education is the secondary purpose to schooling. Schooling is about conformity. And of course, historically, lots of kids didn't like it. They played truant. They instinctively rebelled. I instinctively rebelled. I went to 9 different schools. I didn't realize it at the time that, I was rebelling, but I wasn't going to be broken by authority. Similarly with the army, I ended up resigning my commission because I just didn't want to be in that relationship, which was an essentially and literally abusive one.
Yep. Well, you know where schools came from originally? The first state to mandate schools was Prussia. In 1806, Napoleon's army routed the Prussians, his ragtag army. Now, you're a historian, I'm not, right? I just know about the history of schools. And there was a philosopher, Johann Fichte. He lobbied the Prussian royal family to institute a system called schools. He said, listen, if we remove children from their parents at a young enough age and we have them engage in meaningless activities, they will learn to obey those state authorities. So they set up the school system. Those children became the foot soldiers of the highly disciplined Prussian army that then defeated Napoleon. And Prussia's only way of acquiring wealth was through imperial conquest because they had no resources of their own. And then industrialists in the US and in Britain and France saw what was happening with the school system. Thought, okay, well, we can bring this into our countries to train people to do as they're told, not have independent livelihoods, work in factories, in our factories, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, making widgets without complaint. So then we have the evolution of that whole system. It wasn't designed to educate at all. It was designed to conform, obey, and comply. And then the thing about obedience, here's a test, right? If you're religious and I say to you, go and pray now, well, you might go and pray because it actually has value for you. The only test for obedience is if I have you engage in something that has no meaning or relevance to you. like 1066, like the list of the kings and queens of England. Not how to open a bank account, not how to change a tire, not how to fix a puncture, not how to have a good life and have a working life. No, learn stuff that's irrelevant.
Yeah, a very interesting point. But have you seen Fritz Lang's Metropolis?
I haven't.
You must.
I must. Okay.
It's a silent movie, probably
I know of it.
The greatest film ever made. It has some extraordinary scenes in it that are about conformity and about the folly of power as well. But if you haven't seen Metropolis, have a look at it. This point of education, I mean, I never really liked school, and it's interesting that we're having this conversation because school never taught you the right stuff.
No.
And you were being bullied into learning the wrong stuff, the useless stuff, and basic economics, basic how do you change a plug, all of this stuff. I think maybe schools are better at that now. But
how does money work? How does fractional reserve banking work? Where does it come from? Really?
No, that's okay. Fractional reserve banking is a very, very good deal, isn't it? Because most people, if you even explain to them, well, do you know what? The banks lend more money than they've actually got. They sort of look at you and go, what? And I said, yeah, this is the fractional reserve banking system, which you will know more of than I will, Rich. But basically, the banks can have deposits of 1/10 of what they lend, which is extraordinary. It means that the whole edifice of banking now, since we came off the gold standard, is built on nothing. That could, of course, fall back to nothing all too easily. It probably won't. I don't know. It's a 50.
It is falling back to nothing. It always.
I asked somebody in the city who runs a hedge fund recently, and I said I probably asked them 18 months ago, what's the chance of another 1929? And they said 10, 20%. And then I asked them recently, and they said 50%.
Oh,
and then I probed a bit further, and I said, well, what's going on? And they said to me, well, in simple terms, and this was a brilliant economist with all the qualifications. In simple terms, they're off the last page of the economic textbook now, and everything that's being done is experimental. So nobody really knows where it will lead. They might pull it off, they might not.
Well, I think I know where it will lead, right? And apart from the inevitable, what the Great Reset want to do, which we talked about in our other videos, CBDCs, but we have Europe deindustrializing. Germany, BASF moving out of Germany to go to China. They don't have the energy in order to manufacture goods like they used to, such that they're affordable and the rest of the world can afford them. They are destroying their farming industry, like what's happening in the Netherlands, and they don't have the gas in order to produce, or the urea in order to produce the fertilizers, or the diesel to keep agriculture and industry running. Same deal in Britain. So there's going to be no way of generating wealth.
Germany, France, and Britain, and Italy for that matter, used to make, and in some of those countries still make, amazing widgets. We've got to get back to making widgets.
We're not going to with the current administration because they have
no interest in it. But if everything is outsourced to China or Asia or wherever, India maybe, we're going to have huge problems going down the line. Now, I have, from a personal politics point of view, I think as a country, Britain should be self-sufficient in food. It should be self-sufficient in all the pharmaceuticals, in arms, so it can defend itself.
Self-sufficient in energy.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, well, we could, and I think it all begins with energy. We could very easily be self-sufficient in energy through North Sea oil, through coal, and then that's the beginning of everything. If the Netherlands, tiny country that it is, with a smaller population, can be the world's second largest exporter of food, it's possible for Britain to do that, building on its energy reserves.
I mean, my farmer friends tell me there will be a food crisis. Lots of farms are going bust now. I mean, their fertilizer prices have trebled. Their fuel prices have trebled. It's almost impossible to make money out of a farm now. So lots of them are leaving it. Only the big farms succeed. But anyway, going back to what we just said, here are you and I as intelligent people saying, yeah, well, we should make more stuff. We should have our own energy. We've got it, for goodness sake. We should exploit it. This is fairly basic, logical stuff. Yet government doesn't do it. There's some moves now to improve the energy situation a bit, but they'll no doubt be insufficient. There's not government policy encouraging farmers, so we're self-sufficient in food. All this stuff isn't happening. So here's the question. We can see what should happen. It's not so complicated, but it isn't happening. Now, why isn't it happening? Generally speaking, it isn't happening because of transnational corporate interest.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we covered this in our other video, right? And I don't want to go over the same ground here because I want people to watch that one. And the government isn't serving our interests. They're serving the interests of transnational interests, like you said, like the WEF, the UN, the IMF, and everything. And in the background is this impending monetary collapse because every single fiat currency, over 3,500 of them, has collapsed. And this one is going to collapse. This Western monetary system is going to collapse because there's nothing to back it. We've got no way in Britain and Europe of generating wealth, or we have in Britain, but we're not nourishing it. We're not encouraging it. We're not utilizing it. And then to bring it back in the beginning to schools before we wrap up, people don't question because they've been trained just to go along, just to go along. Do as you're told, do as you're told, line up, roll your sleeve up, wear a mask, stay away from Granny in order to protect her. Well, no one's thinking, wait a minute, Granny's going to freeze to death this winter because of the sanctions against Russian energy throughout Europe. That's insane. But that's it. We don't
We've killed so many grannies. It just makes me cry. I mean, I went through the death of my ma, and she died in good circumstance. And she had a fall. Unfortunately, it wasn't found for 24 hours, and that's really what killed her. It took 18 months to happen, but we killed a lot of grannies, and we don't seem to be very worried about it. When we were sending people back to old people's homes, and I don't like old people's homes. I mean, I was paying the family was paying unbelievable amounts of money, 1,500 quid a week or something. But I don't like old people's homes. I think old people should be with their families, and as happens in Asian culture, for example, and in Southern European culture. But we don't do that because we're moving towards this big state model. It's a nuclear family or an individual. The 1984 state doesn't really want couples even. It just wants individuals that it can control. But there are many people who've fallen casualty, and maybe that's a thing to end this broadcast with. And we've forgotten them. Many people fell casualty over the last couple of years, and no one even mourned them. People who died in old people's homes, and their family couldn't get to them because of some ridiculous restriction. I mean, how have we gone so, forgive my French, so fucking wrong? How have we created a society that has become so inhumane, that abuses so much, that exploits so much, that prevents ordinary people from having a happy life? Because it does. The society we've created is not a happy one, and it's increasingly unhappy and dystopian, with a big state that seems to be able to justify its authoritarian control without any proper democratic debate. Well, we're a little bit of debate. We're just a squeak in the wind, but we're doing what we ought to be. And let's hope other people watching this will do their duty too and start to talk about it, start to consider it, make others more aware, start to research this stuff. Don't believe what we say. Go and find out for yourself. Find out what's really happening. But above all, remember that people in the past gave their blood for the democracy that we live in. Democracy is a beautiful thing. And the answer to our problems is not less democracy. It's more, better, and more representative democracy. And I don't care what political or color label is on it. That's the sort of society we've got to build if we're going to survive. And survival is not a given now. But that's the sort of society we need if we are going to survive. Thanks, Rich.
Mike, thank you so much. I don't have anything to add to that. Really, really appreciate it. Everybody, please share this video far and wide. Follow Mike on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with humanity, compassion, love, and ask questions. This is Crypto Rich and Crypto Mike signing out. All the best. Bye.
Bye-bye.